in case you guys.
We forgot to remind you. Glad
Yeah,
you
well, that's okay. I remembered this time. I was like, okay, don't forget to record. And what I thought we'd do a couple things today. I thought, I want to go back over. I'm just using a scrap piece. I've got this painting that didn't work out on one side, so I'm going to start with a scrap piece. I think for, and we can do a couple of things. I want to do some practice washes and some practice strokes with the brush, with the round brushes. You guys have all heard my spiel. Everybody's heard my spiel, right? On palettes, and I'm pretty sure everybody has, right?
I'm new to this, so.
Oh, you're new. You're new. That's right. Yeah. I'm sorry. Okay, so generally, I like to spend the first class kind of talking a little bit about, and I'll just keep the camera on my palette, but or I mean my board here. Real quick, this used to take much longer, but I've kind of boiled it down to a couple of things. Obviously, you need good quality paper, and I like, and you don't necessarily have to buy the pad like this. It's actually kind of expensive. I just like this size, so that's why I buy it. But I do like Arches, cold press, watercolor paper. This happens to be 140 pound, and it's really inexpensive, or it's relatively inexpensive compared to like if you were buying 300 pound. And you can see it's pretty thin. I don't have a sample of 300 pound handy, or I'd show you that. It's really a lot thicker, but this is good stuff. And life is really too short to paint on cheap paper. So I would say if you're going to splurge on anything, just buy some Arches. You'll be happy. Fabriano makes a good paper as well, and I have a little sample thing. I haven't tried it, but this is their Artistico watercolor paper. Again, what it is it's 100%. I don't know if you can see that or not. It's 100% cotton. Here we go. Let me show you this one. It doesn't have the glare because it's in the classic. 100% cotton rag. Anyway, this extra white Fabriano is really good too. That's what this is. I should just take it out of this. Well, they're single sheets is why I left it in there. But essentially, it's a really nice. This is 140 weight as well. So these are a couple of brands of paper that I recommend. Don't buy Strathmore or Canson from Hobby Lobby. Hobby Lobby usually has one or two of these in stock, but you can order these online for much cheaper than Hobby Lobby. I think I paid like $11 for this, and at Hobby Lobby it's like 20. And if you order enough of them, I think you can get free shipping from like places like cheapjoes.com or jerry'sartorama.com. And then, like anything else you can get by with inexpensive stuff, paint, you can get by with pretty inexpensive paint. This isn't inexpensive paint here, but I'll show you what I like to use really quickly. I like to use, this happens to be indigo, and it's a tube of Holbein artist watercolor. This just happens to be the indigo, which is this color here. I like to use tube paint in a palette, but you don't necessarily need a really expensive palette like that. You can see I have a whole slew of little jars right here with other colors, and I've created a travel, which a lot of these colors come out of this little travel kit. I have 2 of these. I think my mom and I ordered these several years ago, and I think we paid $7 for them or something. And they're little beading jars that we then labeled and filled with our colors. These are colors that I don't have in this palette, but I have in my traveling palette. So that's why they're out. Whereas these that aren't out, I have in this porcelain palette. Like here you can see quinacridone gold, and I have quinacridone gold right there. A little hard to see, but here in the corner. So you can make a palette out of anything. This one again was a beading. It came with this little case, which was kind of cool. This little plastic case, and then I put some white vinyl on it, and I use that as a palette when I'm traveling and or teaching. So this is the palette times 2, because I have 2 of them, one for the warm colors and one for the cool colors, but that I use when I'm teaching. And it's really great. You can use ice cube trays from the dollar store and a porcelain, like a ceramic plate, a white ceramic plate. My sister came up with that idea. And actually, I know several people who've done that. If you look closely at my palette, so this is a porcelain palette, but this section of wells right here, if you look closely, you can see that these are porcelain. These are flexible and made out of white caulking, because this was one long tray and I didn't like that. I wanted more, wells for color. So I used some white caulking and subdivided it up into an equal number on both sides, because I thought it was a really, Tom Lynch, this is his signature porcelain palette. And the only reason I bought it is because he sold it to me personally. And it was on sale for less than what he was buying it, or what they were selling it for from like Cheap Joe's and places like that. So instead of, I don't know, it was like $80 or something, maybe it was $60. I think I got it for like $20 or $30, something like that. Both my mom and I bought one of these, and we both did this little thing. He uses it to store his brushes in, and he'll mix paint over there in a smaller little area. I just seemed like a waste of space. I don't really care for these little things. These are to hold brushes in. You can kind of see there, I stuck a brush in that one over here. Again, I would much rather have a well right there. But again, that's the way he designed it. And this was the closest porcelain palette to what I like. If I ever become famous and get to design my own porcelain palette, it will actually have wells all the way around. This is a specific palette. Like he used to use Hooker's Green, Permanent Green number 2, Permanent Green number 1. What did he have? He had, can't remember what was here, but then he had, I can't remember what was here either, but he had yellow ochre. Then these were all fairly accurate of what he had. Permanent yellow lemon, permanent yellow deep, permanent yellow orange, permanent red, or permanent magenta, permanent alizarin crimson, opera. And then he uses cerulean blue, peacock blue, ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, and royal blue. Back when he used, and then there was this pink that he used. That's almost looks like Pepto-Bismol, not like opera, but it was actually a very opaque, had white in it, pink, which I have somewhere, but it looks like bubble gum or something like that. And it was really handy for painting little flowers and stuff. That was kind of fun. But I changed it up. When I first did this palette, I had the colors that he had in the exact same thing, but I switched out quinacridone gold for yellow ochre. And I've added other colors that I like. And I'll talk about those if I'm using them. Trying to get that to kind of show the palette a little bit better. So anyway, you don't need a fancy palette like this. I like traveling with these little guys here. I mean, they're lightweight. They have lids. They will kind of spill a little bit because they're threaded. One of the gals who takes this class, who's not here tonight, but she is registered, Janie Felix, she actually bought some beading jars that have little press-on caps, and they seem to work a little bit better than the screw caps. But she liked that idea. And then, like a white dinner plate or something that, an old, go to the thrift store and find an old China dinner plate, and you can use that as a mixing tray. And then I use, I have, and I've talked about this before, I have like 8 bazillion brushes. These are the 4 that I use, and really I could get by with like these 2 or maybe these 2. And I could do 90% of what I paint with 2 brushes. So you don't need a lot. I do also recommend, let's see if I can zoom or angle this so you can see I have a couple of water buckets here. I like deep water buckets. That's a personal preference because I like if I'm cleaning my brush, having a deep water bucket allows the paint to settle on the bottom, and then the water stays fairly clean, even when it's pretty pretty dirty. It's fairly clean this top little bit, and that's where I'm washing my brushes. So that's kind of it. Oh, and then and I don't think I covered this last time, and I should have. Let me just. I have a drawing board here. This one's made out of gator board, which is very similar to foam core, except for instead of a paper outer sheathing, it's plastic. This one's pretty old and pretty beat up, but it came. I ordered it from Cheap Joe's in this size. When it came, it was bright white, and I have subsequent. Well, you can kind of see. That's almost a little bit of the pure what it looked like right there. It was white, and as you can see, it's not so much anymore. You can also see I have staple dimples in this. I wouldn't really recommend stapling into this. What I plan to do is actually take this and put a piece of mat board on top of it, and then I can staple into it and stretch my paper if I feel like doing that. And I'll talk about stretching paper at some other point. But I was stretching paper here and just trying to staple it in. I haven't gotten around to finding some ugly cheap. There was a whole bunch of ugly, crappy mat board here, and I missed my opportunity. I think they tossed it. I missed my opportunity to grab a piece and glue it down to this with contact cement, and then that gives you a thing to staple into. But that's really not that important. What's important is just to have something that you can set up on something like this. This is just a piece of mat board that's been cut, into. It's been scored so that it folds into a triangle. But you don't even have to do that. You can have, if you have a big roll of tape, that works as well. Just to have something so your painting is on an angle. You can use that big thing of tape, and it doesn't even have to be that big. It can actually be just a normal roll of masking tape, that normal size. I had this cool pencil box that was my grandmother's, that I think was I don't know. It says "New Home" on it. I think it was some sort of. It was something the realtor gave her or something when she bought her house, but or something, I don't know. Anyway, she used it as a pencil box, and that's what I use it as. This makes a really good little stand. It's a couple inches tall. My box of things, and then let's see. A sketchbook is handy too. You don't necessarily have to have it for this class, but I generally sketch out everything. This is a painting we did last time. Here it is. I'm I'm still eyeballing it to make sure I'm done with it, but that was the one we did last time, or at the end of the class, and this was the sketch I did for it. And I like to do the sketches to work out my composition. Sometimes my composition changes from there you can see I was demonstrating how to paint pine trees and how not to paint pine trees. Anyway, this is the 2-inch roll of paper that I was looking, or tape that I was looking for. That makes it good. Anyway, I have these sketchbooks. I use those to sort of work out my composition, whether we're working from a photo or not. I still like to do a sketch and actually work from the sketch more than the photo. But yeah, so if you let me just take this out of here for a second, and I'll just show you. You know, I've got a bit of a. You can see I've got a bit of an angle right there, a couple of inches slant, and that allows me to use gravity as another tool. So I don't believe I talked about that last time, and I didn't think about it until after the class. There we go. After the class was done, I was thinking, did I ever cover the fact that I can, and I know I've done it in previous classes, but sometimes I don't know. Sometimes I forget things. Oh, and then also another handy tool is this. Now, I know recently it became kind of a hot commodity, but toilet paper is a really good tool. Just the cheap stuff. It doesn't need to be the expensive stuff, especially anything that's scented or has lotion in it or something. If you don't have toilet paper, Kleenex works really well, almost identical. Again, no Puffs Plus, nothing with lotion added. Just cheap facial tissue. So both of these are great watercolor tools. And then kind of the last thing is an old toothbrush. Actually, this was brand new when I started using it to paint in. I never actually used it to brush my teeth, but because that would be kind of scary if that was what my teeth looked like. So those are kind of the tools, real quick, that you kind of need. And you don't need, like I have, looking at this, I have like a bazillion colors right here. You really don't need this many to get started. So don't feel intimidated by the fact that I have 800 colors here. If you have 12, or really you just need. And the reason I have like 3 greens is because I have a light green, a medium green, and a dark green. But then I also have a sap green, and then I have this kind of blue green. They don't look that great on camera. It's really hard to tell. But the sap green's kind of more earthy, and this is kind of more aqua. This is called Viridian green. It's got a little bit more blue in it, and this is called sap green, and it's just a little more earthy looking. But I like to have a medium, or a light, a medium, and a dark version of the color. Here you can see I have a light, a medium, and a dark version of yellow. So I have lemon yellow, kind of a permanent yellow deep, and then I've got an orange. So those are kind of the 3 that I have of those. It's kind of like that's why there's so many of those colors. But really, you could get by if you had a lemon yellow and like this is permanent yellow orange, but you could have a cadmium orange. That's very similar to this. You could have a cadmium yellow lemon or lemon yellow. That's any of those are the same or almost identical. I mean, you can see I have other yellows. This is Azo yellow. It's actually kind of, you would think it would be, because it looks very similar to that, but it's actually kind of in between this and this. And then I have Indian yellow here, which is right there, which looks like it's very similar to this, but it actually kind of falls in between these two. And then I have Pyro Orange, which actually makes this nice kind of salmon peach color when it's here it looks a little more orange, but when you thin it out even more, it comes out as kind of a salmon peach kind of color. So, you know, I have a whole slew of colors here. I'm going to use them and I'm going to tell you what I'm using, but you don't necessarily need to get them. If you like them though, feel free, you know, by all means, get some. I think that, whoops, I just stuck my finger in quinacridone gold. That was really dumb. You know, but you don't have to buy them all at once, because this is, you know, this is several $100s worth of paint. It sounds like it shouldn't be, but it is. I'm always amazed that there's that much that paint's that expensive. But you know, just buy a color here and there that you think you might like. Like I really like Opera. That's this pink right here. You know, that would be one that I would definitely invest in. That's maybe not a normal yellow, orange, blue, green, red kind of color. Same with Pyro Orange. I really like that. This is a staining color, whereas most of these are not. But I do really like it, and I use it quite a bit. Okay, so I've yammered on enough about that. Does anybody have any questions? I know most everybody's taken this class before, but maybe something has. Oops, I'm pulling on the wrong thing. Maybe somebody has a question, no matter what. If not, that's okay too. Now I got
Michael?
Yeah.
Can you send us a list of your top 10 colors?
I do. Yeah. You're supposed to get one with when you register, but maybe they're not giving. Maybe they didn't do that. But I can. I will email everybody. I've got it here. I put together a list of stuff that the one that I was going to use good.
Well, please do, because they did not send us or tell us about any kind of list, or at least they didn't with me for when I registered.
I got nothing, and I've registered 3 times. So.
Yeah.
I registered today and I just asked them for the list and they emailed it to me.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah. What's going on? Okay. Somehow I got signed out of this. Well, I will email you guys all the list tonight when when class is over. And I apologize for that. I'll remind them that they need to give everybody the list, because otherwise.
Yeah, because Cheap Joe's is kind of slow in delivery. I mean, they had
Yeah.
the things I needed, but by the time I got them, it was like second or third class was already, you know, complete. So if we had
Right.
it now, it would help.
Yeah. Sorry, I got signed out of something and was trying to get signed back in. I just want to get that open so that I don't know why I got signed out. Well, it's going to take a while. I wanted to get that open so I didn't forget. but I'll just write it down. Email list. I'll send that out to you guys. Okay. So, after we're done tonight, I would have sent it today. Well, really, they should have, yeah, given it to you when you registered. But sometimes I think they forget I have a list of stuff. And what it is it's broken down into a list of just essentials that you can get by with, that you don't necessarily, you know, that, well, I shouldn't even use the word get by, that you can paint, you know, and be quite, you know, they're just the essentials. And then I have kind of an expanded list, which when we're in person, I like to use, and I've actually found a new source, so I really do need to update the list. But when we're in person, I like to use these, which are spray bottles, and they look like normal, regular spray bottles, but they're not. They're actually a special kind, which you can see. Let's see. You can see this one has a arrow with a little dot behind it. And here I have one with just the arrow and no dot. Or here, this one that I was spritzing myself with because it's really hot over here. This one has nothing. The one with the arrow and the dot gives you a varied kind of spray pattern. So you have little tiny dots and medium-sized dots and large dots. Just random, you know, it's a random sized dot pattern. Whereas if I use this or this one that has the blue paint in it, these are fine mist sprayers, like 99% of the spray bottles that you can buy on the market. This one's sitting here, but maybe that somehow that's not fitting in. Oh well, that's all right. So when we're in person, I like to use these, and I'll update that with the new information on where to get those spray bottles. If you're interested, you know, somewhere down the line, you'll at least know where to get them. This, you can see, I don't know if you can see it, but this piece of paper is actually fairly dirty because it's got a painting that didn't quite work on the other side. And I think it's been knocked around. I think I've carted it to and from class. I have a whole stack of, you know, scrap paper and stuff that sometimes I use as demo things. And then sometimes, let's see. So what you'll need to do is take a piece of paper. It doesn't necessarily need to be this big. This is 9 by 12. It's a little hard to tell for scale, but what's the deal there? Anyway, this is 9 by 12. Whatever size you're comfortable using, you don't need a huge piece of paper for this. Again, I just like this size. From, you know, it comes in a pad. From, you can also get a block. Of paper, and that's kind of cool because you don't have to tape it down. You don't even have to have a drawing board. It comes on a block, and you can just use the block as the thing that you angle. Let's see here. I just want to find that before I, so I can open it up. is that list? Well, I thought I had it really quite easily found, but I'm gonna have to look for it. No, that's okay. I will anyway. I'll send that out to you guys, so that you can get it, because I didn't know they weren't giving it out, or I would have been I would have been emailing it to everybody. But anyway, yeah, like I said, it's got kind of a list of things you definitely need and things that are cool if you want to invest in them. So here's what we're going to do. What I need you to do is tape down a piece of paper and then put a piece of tape down the center so you have two sides. And I'm going to kind of clean this up. There's a little bit of dirt on it. I'm hoping there's no oil. But even if there is, it'll still work. I mean, this won't work as great. But that, that's the interesting thing about watercolor. So I'm going to scroll over here and show you. I'm going to take my flat brush. I'm going to move these out of the way. And I realize my favorite rag is way over there, but that's all right. I'll just grab one of these. And you won't need to draw anything for this or do anything other than just get your paint wet. That's another thing. I have this little I forget what these are called, nasal bulb or ear wax cleaner thingy, whatever these things are. I have one of these. This one I bought brand new, and it's only been used for, actually my mom bought this one. I traded her one that I had bought. She didn't like this one as much. And she had lost the original one she had, but it's really great for sucking up water out of, a clean bucket of water, and then using it to wet down your paint. Something that I want to talk about really quickly is make sure you can see, like, let's see if I can find it. Well, here's a good example. So this is Azo yellow, and you can see it is almost full. It's filled up to where there we go. It's filled up to where the threads start, and even probably a little past where the threads start with paint. And that makes sure that I have plenty of paint. Watercolor, you don't want to be stingy with it. I mean, yeah, it's not the cheapest stuff in the world, but like I have this little, what is this? I can't even remember. This is some sort of blue, and this is all I have of it because I can't find it yet to buy more. I can't remember what it is. It's labeled on the bottom, but it's hard to read at night. Not at night, but it's hard to read when it's wet because I can't turn it upside down and really focus in on it because it's not printed in white. You can see I have these labeled with white. Now maybe you can see. This one isn't as wet. You can see this one's labeled indigo in white. That one is labeled with a clear label instead of with black lettering, so it's a little hard to tell what it is. Anyway, I also recommend labeling your colors like this, whether you use, each one of these. It's a little hard to see, but each one of these is labeled. Like I can read permanent rose, rose madder, burnt sienna, brown madder, quinacridone burnt orange, quinacridone gold, which it's a little hard to see the edge of this, but it's, quino gold, hooker's green. Those are all labeled. And that way I can find the colors faster. That, you know, because I generally know, oh, this is, I mean, you eventually kind of memorize them, but some of these that look very similar, you'll forget and you'll be like, is that cobalt blue, or is that cobalt blue? Which one of these is ultramarine? Which one's cobalt? You know, sometimes that happens. So having these labels, which get kind of dirty on my palette, but having those labels, and you can't even really see that I clean that edge off, really help. But so what you're going to want to do is fill up your palette, you know, fill up those wells with a lot of paint. And if it's fresh paint, you have to be very careful, which is why I let mine dry out. So I let it dry out during, you know, between painting. I don't try to keep it moist. And then I just add more water as need be, and it reconstitutes itself. In fact, in the summer, I highly recommend, if you have something like this, I highly recommend not leaving it in your car for more than a day with the lids on, because it will start growing mold. That's just the nature of you know, you get little bits of dust in there, and you know, like here we have a cat at the studio, so I get cat hair. I'm always finding cat hair. I can see a couple pieces in my that I can't really get out in my permanent magenta right here. There's always little bits of cat hair or dust. There's a piece of cat hair right there. Not that you can see it, but because it won't focus, but that is a piece of cat hair. So you get dust and whatnot. So definitely uncover your watercolors and let them dry out completely. It's unlike oils and acrylics, you can reconstitute these. And I like to just get out all my paints because I never know what color I'm going to use. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do a classic kind of easy, easy gradient transition from dark to light with a single color. I'm going to kind of clean this area up here. That's kind of a blue-green kind of weird color that I mixed for something. I'm just going to clean that area of my palette a little bit. It doesn't have to be 100% clean. I'm not too worried about the color. And I'm going to grab, sometimes I do peacock blue. Today I'm feeling a bit of a grab some of this blue. And you can see I've got a fair amount of paint, but now I'm going to just start adding water because I want a lot of water. So I have this nice big puddle. And most of the time, I mean, I know, like if you look over here, I have these little kind of what look like little areas where I've got color, but these were actually very wet puddles at one point. This happened to be dry when I was doing this one, or vice versa. I can't remember if this was dry when I was doing this one, but it looks like I have a bunch of little puddles, but really they were all pretty wet, pretty most pretty high on the water level versus the paint level. I'm just going to get a little more paint, but I have a nice big puddle here of color. And what I'm going to do, I'm now going to scroll back over here. I'm going to grab that, and sometimes because of, you know, if it's a fairly dry day, well, or if I have, you know, skin oil or whatever on my paper, it might take more than one pass. But what I'm going to do is really load up my brush. I got over here a little too soon. I'm going to really load up my brush. You can see that it's dripping. Oops, there we go. It's dripping out. I've really loaded it up with water. Yeah, there you go. You can see it's dripping out. That's how much paint is in my, or water and paint are in my brush. And I'm going to come over here, and just on this side of the paper, you can, it doesn't matter which side, but I'm going to do this one. first. Just on this side of the paper, I'm going to take this 1-inch brush and I'm going to paint a single stroke across. Now, I can tell that I still don't have quite enough in there. So I'm just going to go reload the brush with some color, and I'm going to just really get that saturated. So you can see that I have a nice line of color across the top of my page. And now I'm going to completely wash my brush out. So I'm completely getting it clean. Now you can see there's no paint in it. I just don't want water to drip on my paper. It's completely cleaned out, and it's just full of water. And I'm going to paint right next to, just barely touch the edge of that with my completely clean brush. And it's going to suck that down a little further. So I'm just kind of overlapping a little bit and letting that go down. You can see there's a bead now at the bottom. And what this is allowed, I'm going to just kind of tip it so it goes all the way over. What this is doing is, because I have this at an angle, now I'm going to clean the brush out again. It lets that flow down the paper, but you can see it forms a bead where the paper is dry and it doesn't let it go any further. So this is a really great thing to keep in mind when you're painting. So I'm just going to come along there and do another one. Completely wash my brush out again. And I'm going to come in and do that. Now, sometimes I get all the way down to the bottom of the page. Sometimes I don't. Just depends on the day. This one, I don't think I'm going to make it all the way to the bottom of the page, but that's okay. But you can see I've now got this really nice gradient just because I've cleaned my brush out and used water as I keep going down. Now, I don't always paint in this exact way, but I use this technique a lot more than it seems that I do, because I'll put down a whole lot of paint in a spot and think, okay, well, that's too much. And then I'll add more water and move it around so it's thinner. So it's maybe a little darker in one area and a little lighter in another area. And then basically you can see I can almost go to the white of the paper. I'll keep going. It's a little hard to tell, probably on camera, but there's just a hint of blue on this. Really, the gradient stops right about here. And that's okay, that's all I want, or all I need for this, really. If I wanted to, I could let this dry 100%, flip it around and go the other way and try it again. Or let this dry and start with a dark streak right here and go again. So that's kind of how to make a single color gradient. Now, as this is drawing, I can see that I got a little bit of a line there, maybe a little line streak there. Sometimes it can be a little streaky, but that's okay. It doesn't have to be perfectly smooth. It's just it kind of looks, for the most part, smooth. Plus, I talk a lot between strokes, so I'll end up with streaks. When I'm doing this without explaining what I'm doing, I just do it, and I don't get those streaks. I don't know if you guys can see those or not, but see. Yeah, you can kind of see. There's a streak right there. There's that line where the paper got a little stained. There's one right along there. But again, that's okay. It's not a big deal. Any questions about that? No? All right. I'm going to go ahead and clean up my I should have done that earlier, but I was trying to figure out the finishing touches on this little trolley thing. I'm just cleaning this up so I have some space to work with. The reason I don't always clean it is because sometimes, like that green blue that I had over there, that was kind of a nice color. If I, generally I can reproduce something, but even without seeing it, if I see it on my paper or whatever. But sometimes it's nice to be able to see that mix. Oh, I've got this color right here, which is kind of a gray, and that was, I know how I did it, but to be able to actually see it, I mixed permanent magenta, royal blue, and hooker's green, which is this guy right here. I mixed those together to get that gray right there. And it could have, it's looking to me like maybe it also has a little peacock blue that I threw in there, just to make it a little bit brighter gray versus the royal blue, permanent magenta, hooker green version of that gray. Here, I have a kind of a dark green, and I know that was probably royal blue and hooker's green, or it could have been indigo and hooker's green. Heck, this may even have some indigo in it. This had, it's a little more on the red side right here. It's got a little more purple. So I probably had some quinacridone violet, which is what this is right here, mixed in there. So it's nice. That's why I don't clean my palette off a lot. And that's why, like, that other palette I showed you still has paint on it. Because, I like to see what I've mixed. But here we go. I've got my nice clean area. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do, and I'll show you, I have a sample. We're going to do something, let's see if I can find it really quick. I had it and then I stacked stuff on top, and that was my mistake. We're going to do something right there. All right, sorry about this. I stacked something on top. And I can't find it. Here we go. We're going to do something where we do a multicolored wash. So here you can see I've got, that's royal blue. This is permanent yellow orange. I've got red. Here's some green, more orange coming into that blue. And you can see that it did, and I don't know, well, yeah, it was, actually, I probably started this way, looking at this. Because I generally like to start with lighter colors and work my way down with darker colors. But I started with lemon yellow. There's some opera in there. Here's that orange again. Whether this is permanent yellow deep or permanent yellow orange, I'm not exactly sure. I know that's permanent yellow orange. But you can see it does these really interesting things. In a million years, I could probably never make that color right there if I tried. But if I know that if I take royal blue and I put, and maybe I have some hooker's green up here, and that runs into it, and then I add some orange, I'm going to get something like that. I may never get that exact color again, but I'm going to get something very similar to that. And that's the kind of magic that happens with watercolor. So what I'm going to do is think about some colors that I know work fairly well together. And generally when I'm painting, I'll work with, like my warm colors, like these three, possibly my permanent red or Scarlet Lake, which is a different kind of red, or I'll move in, I'll have some opera, which is that pink right there, maybe alizarin crimson or permanent magenta. I'm kind of playing with these warm colors, or even, or even, these two right here. If I'm So I'll generally use something like that in a space because I'm generally painting light areas first. So my wash will look like this. But there are times when I will, even on a light wash, I'll want a little bit of a cooler color, and I'll drop in some green or some blue because I know it'll do interesting things like this. So that's the point of this exercise. We're just going to grab some colors. I'm going to use, I already have some royal blue right there, so I know I'm going to use that. Let me get a nice little puddle of Hooker's green right here. Let me pull this over just a little bit more so you can see what I'm doing. So I've got a little Hooker's green. And my brush was pretty loaded with water to begin with. I added a little bit more water. Plus, there's a lot of water in that well. I really saturated it. Sorry about that. Let's see. There we go. Somebody started to try and call me, and that made the camera go away for a second. So I know I'm going to use some of that. So I'll clean my brush. I want to definitely clean my brush out extra well now. So I've got a clean brush, and I'm going to grab some of this permanent yellow lemon, just lemon yellow. Now it has a slight green tint to it already, but even though I washed my brush out, I know that there's a little green tint in that still, just because I didn't wash it out probably as well as I thought I did. Probably should have started with the yellow and then gone to the others, but that's all right. I know I'm going to probably use some of this permanent yellow deep. And there's a fair amount of water there already in that, so I'm not going to worry about adding any. I'm going to probably use this permanent yellow orange. So I've got 3 oranges, a green, a blue. Let me grab I've got a yellow, 2 oranges, a green and blue, and then I'm going to grab some of this permanent red. It's just nice, pretty red. So I have these 3 puddles. I don't always make puddles before I start, but when I know that, I kind of know what color I'm going to start with and what, if I'm painting a specific thing, I know I'm going to use specific colors. I will grab a spot. I'm getting a little of that orange in there, but that's all right. So I've now grabbed some of that lemon yellow, and I'm going to start this kind of, and again, we're not drawing anything. We're just going to paint in that square, and if you don't get all of it, it's okay. Just puddle there. And I want to make sure that I have lots of water because I want those little beads, kind of like we got the bead that we were pulling down here. We're going to be pulling beads around the same way. So I'm going to start off with a little lemon yellow. It's fairly wet. You can see I have a nice bead right there. Then there's a little bit here. I've got that lemon yellow on there. I think that's enough of it for this exercise. So I'm going to grab a little of the permanent yellow deep now. I really cleaned my brush out, and then I left a lot of water in it. And I'm going to start putting the color next to it, but not touching. And then I'm going to come up and just let that kind of do its thing. I'm going to let that bleed into that. Now I'm adding a little bit more water because I want that to run a little bit better. But you can see the 2 are blending nicely. I think I'm going to grab a little opera just so you guys can see what that does. And I'm going to grab, even if you guys don't have opera, you could use red or something, but this is, I'll show you here. This is the opera right there. Grab a little more water. And I'm just going to drop that in over here and maybe pull that up into there. And then I can even drop some in on top and add more water to that to get it to run. Maybe I want to actually have that come up and meet that yellow there. And then we'll pull it down. And I've got kind of an orangey pink going on. It does this kind of, it's doing this kind of cool stuff. I'm going to switch over and grab a little of this Hooker's green. And I'm going to come over here. Now you think that's kind of orange, and green and orange don't really go together. But I'm going to put some Hooker's green down. And then I'm going to come up and you can see I accidentally splattered some up in there. But I'm going to come up and just sort of touch that and let that yellow come down into that green. And you can see it starts to displace the green and push it down because gravity is pushing that yellow down, and it's mixing and making this really interesting color that I could not mix if I tried. If I took that orange and yellow, or that, really what it is permanent yellow deep. It's kind of an orangey yellow. If I took that and put it next to this green, or mixed it with the green on my palette, I'd end up with a really gross brown. Let's see, I'm going to grab a little, oops, did not think so I have to redo that. I'm going to grab a little red. Maybe come down here with a little red and see what happens. You'd think that's going to be gross, but it might not. It might. But this is all about experimenting. We'll just pull that over into there, like so. I never got into some, I didn't use any blue. I want to use that, so I'm going to clean my brush out and grab some of this royal blue. And maybe we'll start over here with the green and let that kind of come down and see what happens. And then over here, we'll kind of touch that red. And, you can see there's spots where I'm missing the paper. That's okay. Don't worry about that. I'm just kind of playing around with getting these colors to match. I mean, to blend. If you want, if that does worry you, you can always come in and add a little more water and see what happens. That starts to form blossoms and push more of that around. I'm going to grab some. I never got into some of that permanent yellow orange, so I think I'm going to finish out with that. I've got, I didn't clean my brush out that great, but I'm going to finish out with that. Just pull that up, and then let's see what happens there. That forms a kind of an interesting color. So you can see, let me move that up a little bit so you can see. I didn't really go after this large spot there, but we'll just see what happens. And if I don't like it, like this is kind of an ugly mud that happened right here, but on the paper, it doesn't look too bad. I can now go back in and maybe drop in, I'm gonna grab a little more opera and drop in and see what that does right in here. That'll dissipate some of the color, even on the green. I'll show you what it does on the green. I can take this opera and drop in a little, and it doesn't, it's not mixing with the color. What it is it's there, and it's sort of on top of and intermingled with the color, but it's not really mixing like you would think of mixing on your palette. I'll add a little more there, maybe add some more water. Pull that across. Now you can see where I've added water. I lightened up that spot right there. That'll end up being much lighter than the rest of the painting. And really, this is just a color exercise, but you can see how these colors interact. Like this yellow and green, that is really cool the way that works. This orange and blue, we're getting some really interesting things happening there. The red coming down into the blue, you can see, well, I mean, I added some opera there too, but it had already started to kind of form kind of a purpley blue color on its own. Same with over here. and then I brought that orange up into there, and I have a little brown, but it's not a ugly brown. It's, you know, if I were to mix this orange and blue and red together, I'd get an earthy kind of weird, you know, ochre color kind of color, but it wouldn't be as pure as this that I'm getting at. It would be much dirtier looking. Whereas when I let the water kind of do its thing, again, using gravity, and you're not, you know, just because, let's say this is the top of my painting, it doesn't have, you know, I can, if I want something to flow the other way, let's say I want that gross green, which is now cruising down through there to flow into there, I can pull that, and I can even drop, let me just throw that over a little bit more, pull this down. I can get this on an angle this direction and add more water and see what happens there. So I'm just, you know, this is just about playing with the color. I think I got a really nice purple there. If, you know, my paper's starting to buckle a little bit, so I can hold it up a little bit more at a more extreme angle. And maybe let it run this way a little bit. I'm not sure what's going on. This dried quite a bit right there, so I'm just going to add a little water to that and see what happens. Yeah, so that's all just gravity doing work. And I'll admit right now, I'm not super crazy about that, but I knew that would happen. I've done that enough to where I experimented with opera and green, and you know, that's not super great. I can come back in and pick some of that back up with my thirsty brush, and all that is I took my brush, I cleaned it out, and then I wiped it and squeezed it out, and then I just go in and I pick stuff up, and you can see I've now picked up and lightened that area. I can come back in and add more water if I want to get it to kind of run and become more of a blossom. But that's kind of this multicolored wash, which 99% of the watercolorists in the world, they may not think that they do, or we may not think that they do, but 99% of the watercolor artists in the world are using a multicolored wash like this. Whether it's this color, or it can be earth tones, it can be, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be yellows and greens and blues, or reds and yellows and greens and blues. You know, it can just be a series of blues where you've got, you know, like a peacock blue, which is a really pretty sky blue, and then you've got some royal blue, which is a little darker. You know, it's that color. Or that color. You've got, and then you can have a mix of royal, or, you know, and then you can use indigo, which is even darker. And you can mix a little green and royal, or green and indigo together and get a even dark. You know, you can do that in the sky where you have just a whole slew of, you know, blues, different hues of blue. And it's still a multicolored wash, even though it seems like it's monochromatic, just blues. You know, it's a whole slew of different hues of blue. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yep.
And what we'll do is, after we're done doing some of these exercises, we'll do a little sky demonstration, because I always like practicing skies, and I think they're good to practice. And the cool thing is, you can take that sky and you can turn it into something. I have a couple of examples here at the studio where I was practicing just painting a sky, and then I I ended up turning it into a painting later. Okay, so I'm going to, this isn't really dry yet, but I'm going to go ahead and untape mine. If you guys want to use a hair dryer to dry your, oh, that's the other thing that I didn't really talk about. I use a hair dryer to dry stuff. I'll just show you real quick. This one's kind of on its last leg, but I'm really cheap. You can just use that to kind of, this has so much water on it, I probably should get some of that off of there before I try to dry it, but all right, that's good enough. But yeah, a good, you know, travel hair dryer, something small that you can kind of stick in a bag. That's what this is. It's, you know, although it's sort of given out, I kind of have to hold it in place. And it only has one speed now because I dropped it and it broke. And when I put it back together, I was missing a piece, which I found, but now I don't remember how it goes in. Okay, so I'm gonna pull this up and get it out of the way. It's dry enough now. But you know, like I don't know that I would necessarily turn this into something, but it could be that I do something with this side. But you know, this is a nice kind of, I could turn this into a little landscape with just kind of a calm sky, or maybe it's you know, a waterscape or something. You know, I can, there's opportunities to use this. I've turned a couple of these into little landscapes as well, so not wasted paper, just it is practice, obviously, but you know, practice makes perfect. And I know it seems tempting to use cheap paper to practice, but don't fall into that trap. I guess this is because practicing on cheap paper does not make you better. It just makes you frustrated. I was going to try and find a scrap, but I may have to use one of these pieces that that's why, and also like these pieces, I keep these scrap things. Well, what I call scraps. Yeah, here we go. So here's a thing that was kind of fun that I did one time. I just made up these shapes on top of these little multicolored washes, and I came back in with other colors on top, just playing around. It's a little, I'm going to tape that down. Out of the way. And this is not that important to really fully tape down. I'm just going to tape it down so it doesn't move on me. And again, this is just, like I said, so it doesn't move. Normally I like to tape all the edges, but for this is just an exercise. It's not that important. And what we're going to do now, so that was using our 1-inch flat brush. Now, if you don't have a 1-inch flat brush, a 3/4 inch or a 1/2 inch flat brush is a good investment. This one is a really inexpensive brush, but they discontinued it, so I stopped talking about it. I used to recommend it all the time because I love it. And the company doesn't make it anymore. They make an 1.5 inch and they make a 2-inch, but they stopped making their 1-inch. I have written them. I've even gotten answers back saying, "Oh, well, we'll take that under advisement." It's a brilliant brush, but you know, you don't necessarily need. This happens to have a flat handle, which I really like. But I have other brushes. I guess I don't have any within reach at the moment. But I have other brushes that have round handles that are flat. That one I just happen to like how that fits in my hand. So we're going to take a round brush, and this is my number 10 round. I think for this I'm going to use, I'll use my number 8 round. This is also an inexpensive brand of brush. I mean, they're not free or anything. They're not like the cheapest brush you can buy, but they're a pretty decent brush. I don't know if you guys read that. It's the Low Cornell 7020 Ultra Round. And they come in a variety of sizes. This is an 8. This is a different brand, but they also make a 10. This is a 10. This is made by Holding. And this was a free sample that Cheap Joe sent out when you ordered stuff. So that was cool. And then this is a number 6. I have a Low Cornell. I was just testing out this Holding to see how I liked it. And it is a pretty nice brush. You can go on up to, here's one that I have. Here's a Low Cornell round that's a 14. I have a lot of, here's a Robert Simmons that's an 18. And, this is another good brand. But, these start getting up in the really expensive. Whereas, this is like a $8 or $9 brush, probably, or a $10 brush for one of these. I have a Cheap Joe's Watercolor. This is a 38, and it looks like kind of a makeup brush when you're looking at it when it's dry, but when I get it wet, it goes to a point just as nice as these. So doesn't matter. I could do this exercise with this giant water hawk. I'm not going to because it's, why when I have a, but any brush that has a nice point, this has a really great point on it. I could do it with this number 10, but I thought I'd pick a brush that was kind of medium size. Well, and really it's actually on the small side, but it's kind of my medium sized brush that I use a lot. And I'm going to get that wet. And this one's actually starting to wear a bit. The point isn't quite as great as it used to be. But I'm going to come over here, and I'm just going to use this blue because it's dark, and I happen to have it. I could use the green just as easily, but I'm going to go ahead and use this blue. And let's say I was, mixing with this brush as well. I'll just show you. I'm picking up some of this green, this stuff that I have here just because it's there, and I can just kind of soften it and mix it in and make it darker color. Because we're not, this doesn't need to be anything. But let's say I was mixing green and blue and magenta together, and I'm sitting here mixing. I'm grabbing color and I'm mixing and grabbing more color, grabbing color, going back and forth. Let's see if I can get that. There we go. Going back and forth between everything, and I'm mixing. The brush gets kind of beat up, and you can see that, it doesn't have that great a point. So as I'm picking my brush, as I'm loading my brush, I'm going to just twist it like that. And that will, and maybe if I go up closer, basically I twist it like that against the palette, and it forms a nice point for me. This brush is getting a little worn, so it's not the best point. I need to probably get some brush conditioner and get it. I can recondition this brush and make it last a little bit longer as those bristles get a little bent. But you can see I really rotate the brush in my hand as I'm picking it up, and that gives me a nice point. I also want to make sure that I have a fairly good load, so if I pick it up, it should start to drip. And I can see a drip forming, but it's going to take a while. but I have enough loaded in there that I've got a good drip, a fair amount of water loaded in the brush. But anyway, these low Cornells, this is probably, I want to say it's like a $10 brush. A lot of times you can buy them on sale. They used to carry them at Hobby Lobby, but they don't anymore. They only carry the Master's Touch. Although I have gotten a fairly decent brush or two from that were Master's Touch, that brand that Hobby Lobby carries. I don't like them as much. They don't seem to last as long or be as soft. But they do have them. The Master's Toucher. Just what I do is I will take a brush. Let's see, and like you'll go to. Let's pretend we're at Hobby Lobby. I'll take a brush, and you'll see it, and it'll come with a little plastic doodad like this, and it'll have brush conditioner in it, which keeps it at this really nice sharp point. I will take this brush over to their water fountain by the bathrooms, and I will get it really, really, I'll wash out this brush conditioner stuff, and then I'll tap it against my finger, and if it goes to a nice point, then that's a brush to buy. If it doesn't, I will carefully form it back into a point, put it back in the plastic, and I like to test out a brush before I buy it. So, I know that now I can't get this back in that hole. There we go. Ooh, missed the hair. This one's not a brand new brush. I just keep it in that little deal for when it's traveling. So sometimes hairs get out of place. But I will go test out a few brushes to make sure that they're good. I know that like with low Cornell, every brush that I don't mind ordering these without trying them out first, because every brush I've ever gotten from them has been that has been a good quality brush. Not so much with Master's Touch, but if you test one out here and there, you can get a really nice brush. I just like to test them first. Same with a flat. If you're at Hobby Lobby, make sure that the flat gets to a nice chisel and that it goes back to. This brush is like 10 years old, I think, and you can see it still forms a nice chisel. And that's what you want with a good watercolor brush is a nice chisel. And you can get those Master's Touch brushes will go to a nice chisel. So I don't want to knock them or tell you not to buy them, because you can get by with a really inexpensive brush. Here we go. Here's one with a round. This is a 1-inch low Cornell. It's got a shorter bristle than my Langenickel brush. So you can see it's shorter, but it's the same width. It's got that 1-inch width. And this has a round handle, but it's still a great brush. Nothing wrong with this brush. I just happen to prefer this longer bristle one. But this is a marvelous brush. I haven't painted with this particular one, but for years I used a 1-inch brush just like this, and it was a brilliant brush as well. Okay, so back to this. I got off on a bit of a brush tangent there. I apologize. So we've got our nice point, and we're going to now paint lines. And that seems like it's going to be dull, but what we're going to do is first, and you can see I've got my pinky kind of supporting my hand. I want to make sure that my elbow's not, right now my elbow's resting on the board. I don't want that. I want my arm up. It's a little hard to tell, but my elbow is up off the board. And I'm twisting from my shoulder, not from my wrist or my elbow. This is elbow, this is wrist, this is full arm. And I'm just going to paint a couple of fine lines. And they don't have to be particularly straight. And this is used paper, so it's a little buckled right there. So I had that little thing, but I'm applying consistent pressure. So I'm getting kind of the same thickness of line. If you're using a brand new piece of paper, it might be easier than trying to be all cool and use a used piece. But I'm going to reload my brush. I could have kept going doing that, but I would recommend trying those a few times. And then once you've kind of mastered that, try going, I'm going to do the same kind of a thing. Let's see if move that over there. I'm going to do the same kind of thing. I'm going to start off with a constant pressure, that thin, thin kind of, and then I'm going to press down harder, and you can see I get a thicker stroke, and a thicker stroke there like that. So that allows me to do a whole series of undulations, a thin line. My hand started shaking there. That's what, I have a bit of a shake in my, a little bit of a tremor in my hand. So occasionally when I'm trying to do a fine line without using a liner brush, my hand shakes a little bit. I'll do that again. So I've got this kind of going along there, and then thick and thin and thick and thin and thick. And you can see, I mean, I really loaded that brush up. I had plenty of paint to get all those thicknesses. So I would say practice a few of those, and then and you're thinking, well, gee, that, you know, these are straight lines, but what can I do with that? Well, I can start off thin and then go thick, and I can add volume to something. That wasn't the best little, my hand kind of jiggered at the end, but I can add volume just by going like that. So I start to add a curve. That's not the best job I've ever done, but I start to add kind of a curve to, you know, this could be furrows in a field, but now I've added volume. So it looks like I've got, because I started out thin and then came down thicker, it looks like it's further away and then it curves down that way. Just by, you know, that same thin, thick, which I did a whole bunch here. I just went thin to thick. Of course, then somewhere in there, I pressed a little hard at the end, but that's okay. Any questions about those? This I'll show you real quick. I'll switch to my number 6. And this is something I'm going to tell you outright I struggle with because I don't practice it enough. If I want to do tree branches, you know, I've got a tree coming up like that. There's a branch, and then maybe right where this little tick that. I honestly don't practice these enough, so I'm never really happy with how they look. This needs to be a little fatter, I think, right there. So I'll just add a little bit more, and maybe there's another little guy coming off like that. Maybe there's a little guy coming off there. So I'm just practicing little, little you know, the twigs and things. Again, I feel like I need to practice this more often, and I don't practice it enough. So I highly recommend you guys doing as I say and not as I do, and practicing this a lot more than I do. Just grab, you know, scrap pieces of paper and just practice doing little lines. You know, there I was using kind of a medium-sized brush. Here I have a smaller one. If you want, you can go even finer, but I will say this: nothing great has ever been painted with a number 2 paintbrush, so I generally don't go any smaller than a 6. You know, that wasn't very good, but maybe this needs another thing coming off like that. So just, you know, practicing. We always try to make things symmetrical, and nature is not symmetrical. So I could already tell I was trying to make things symmetrical. But those are great things to practice. You know, these kinds of lines, I use that all the time. If I wanted to make furrows, I'll grab a little green and mix that in with my blue. I'll show you what I did. I grabbed some of my Hooker's green right here and I brought it over here. Maybe I want some dark furrows on a field. That's where that comes in handy. Maybe it's off in the distance. Oops, move that over enough. Maybe it's off in the distance, so it's real small. You know, if I've got a little area that's a little field, it just kind of goes, you know, like that. And it just kind of looks like I've got little furrows off in the distance. You know, and then I could have one that kind of comes the other way. Although I have trouble painting it because I'm right-handed, I have to flip my board around, so I'm not going to do that. But well, and I could start thicker and then go thinner. But I always find it's a little easier to go thin to thick. You know, I can do furrows where they're coming out straight. So I start off pretty thin, and then as I get closer, I didn't have much paint and water in my brush. I sat there and let it get dry. So it starts off thin and then gets kind of thicker as I go. It's still not enough. Well, it's because I'm using a really small brush. You know, thin, thick, and at a bit different of an angle. Maybe angle it a little bit more. And thick. I should be using a bigger brush that holds more paint. Thick. But you start getting those kinds of the farmer was drunk when he did that for so you know, different things like that. All it is pressure with your brush. You know, let's actually load up a bit bigger of a brush. Start thin. I don't know if I should have waited till these dried, and I didn't. But and I mixed in a little more blue with that. And green, you can see there's a nice color change between that green, that dark green, and that blue green. But these are great, you know, great things to practice. You know, doing lines, straight lines, practice doing, you know, thin, thick, thin, thick. Practicing branching, you know, doing branches, furrow kind of shapes, all things that we, you know, you think I'm talking about furrows here, but sometimes if I'm painting a little detail on a door, you know, I've got a little detail, little carved detail that comes in like that. Maybe there's a little, you know, it's like a rosette kind of thing, and it's kind of carved in like that. And then as we get over here, now the shadow's on this side. You know, and I didn't draw this out. Normally I would draw something so I know what I'm doing. You know, really, maybe it's down here, the shadow is more like that. So I'm starting to paint kind of a little rosette kind of thing. Had I drawn it, it would look better. But again, that's what I'm doing here. I'm just painting little, you know, it's a design on top of something. And I'll show you an example of one that's actually painted, so you can see that what I'm talking about. Yeah, here we go. So you can see here on this painting, which we did something similar last class, I think, wasn't it last class? You can see here, I, was just painting these little blobs and then painted around them to form that shape, that rosette, that carved rosette in the wood. Similar to, it started out looking very similar to that. Obviously, I drew it, so I kind of planned it out, whereas here I was not. You get the point. Hopefully. Okay, so any questions about that? Any problems, concerns? No. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to grab, so I was just using scrap paper, obviously, for this. We're going to do kind of a little sky demonstration that you guys can paint along with. And I'm not going to, this may seem more difficult than it is because I'm not going to use a photo. I just have a nice, fairly clean piece of watercolor paper there. And I don't know why this one came out as well, but it did. So let me just put this back in. So I'm not gonna use a photo. I'll show you one that we did. This little demonstration that we did. Was it last class? I think it was last class. Maybe. We did, or maybe it was the class before. Now I accidentally spattered some orange. You can see on this, but this was just painted without really thinking about it. Most of my skies, I'm not looking at a photo of a sky. I will say this though. I take lots of pictures of skies, and I spend a lot of time looking at the sky, and really kind of memorizing how clouds look. And how, how the maybe the wind is making a cloud do something. So I do that. If you've got some toilet paper or Kleenex handy, you're going to want to get a good bit of it. I'm going to take about that much. So I have a nice clump here, and we'll deal with that later. But I just want you to be ready because you need this while the paint or the paper is wet still. So I'm going to tape this down really quickly. And I'm going to kind of tape it in the middle because I like to start off my skies upside down. Just helps me. I've always done that, whether I paint my sky first or last. I always like to paint it upside down because that allows the darker colors to kind of go up. It's the air is a little more clear the closer to the ground you are, or clear looking. It has less color, unless there's dust or something in there, or for the most part, when we're looking at the air around us, obviously it's fairly clear. Let me just center that a little bit better. So I have, let's see, and my fan's really heating up in there. There we go. All right. All right, that's better. Fan's actually blowing on me now instead of near me. For a kid who grew up in Houston, spent a lot of time growing up in Houston, I do not like hot and humid days. I don't even know what the humidity day is. It's probably not even that high. But get some water. Okay. So I'm going to paint. I'm going to leave probably this top third of my Scott, of my, which will end up being bottom third when I'm done. So I have this piece of paper. It's portrait, so it's lengthwise. Oh, Jackie lost. Can everybody hear me? I just noticed Jackie lost audio.
Yep,
I can hear you fine.
Okay. She can't seem to get it back. Maybe that's why I logged her back in, but shoot. Okay. Well, as long as you guys can hear me, I'm sure it's on the recording. So that sucks. Wonder what happened. I don't think she's on here. I need to move this over so I can kind of keep an eye on that off the corner of my eye. Okay. And then it looks like I just lost Becky for a second. Remember? Well, okay. So I have this. I have this set up vertical. So that's just instead of a horizontal layout, I'm going to do a vertical. So I'm going to take this top third, and I'm just going to put a little light pencil line across. I guess that's about a third, maybe it's a quarter. But about that much. I'm just going to put a really light pencil line across that. I don't even know if you guys can see that on camera. Almost, kind of. You can see that little, and that just tells me that somewhere in here is where I'm going to, not really worry about my sky anymore. So I'm going to kind of start fuzzing it out down in here somewhere. And I'm going to only wet my paper in this area. So I've got, and this water is fairly clean, but it's it's got a fair amount of green paint in it. Looks like it's close enough. So I'm just getting this nice and wet, and I have to get it really wet because that fan, I got the ceiling fan and my little other floor, whatever desk fan going, so it'll dry out fast. So I want to get a lot of water on there, get it really wet, so it won't dry out as fast. All right, so got a lot of water on there. And now I'm going to, yeah, you can see it's really, really wet. All over. And this is really the only time I paint wet and wet for the most part. Now I'm going to grab, so I'm going to come over to my palette. And it seems like this is really dirty, but I'm just going to kind of clean up a spot here. It doesn't have to be perfect. But I'm going to grab some peacock blue right here. It'll kind of float on top of that other stuff and won't really hurt, won't really pick up too much of it. I'm going to really load my brush up, and then I'm going to come back over here, and I'm just going to start putting some peacock blue down on my paper. You can see I'm not really worried about, you know, if there were trees and stuff I was painting around, that'd be one thing, but in this case, there's not a whole lot. I just want this to kind of get covered with some color. And then now I'm going to take that, I think I'm going to add a little more water here so it kind of flows down just a bit more. And it's a little lighter right in this area, you know. It's not that important, but if I add just a little fairly clean water to there, it'll be a lot lighter. So I've got that color on there, like peacock blue. Pull some back up in here. And now I need to take my toilet paper, and you can see I've taken that clump and I've made a, whoa, wait, I've got a little waterfall going on here. It's going to land in my lap. Maybe a touch too much water. Okay, you know, I've kind of formed this cloud shape. Obviously, I don't want just a little dot of you know, hitting the thing. I really want to spread this out so it's more of a cloud shape, you know, kind of elongated. And I'm going to come in here and pick that up. And then maybe I'm going to flip it around so I have the, you know, a cleaner side of the toilet paper down. Carry that across there, like that. And then maybe I'll make it just a bit smaller, but still I've got, you know, it's still elongated, it's just a smaller clump. And I've got that, you know, kind of clean side down. We'll kind of pull that up into there. And I like that kind of shape. Need to find another little clean spot, maybe. Still elongated, but smaller. And maybe right in there. Just a bit there. Maybe I'll pick up some right in there. I kind of, you can see I kind of formed a kind of curl. That's weird. I don't care for that shape, so I'll just pick up a little bit there. Now, this is by no means perfect. Maybe we'll have some come down in there like that with a little bit of dark in the middle. It is, you know, it's just the beginning. Let me pick up some of this excess water. I'm just picking that up with a thirsty brush. I'm just wiping, you know, picking it up and then wiping out my brush. Okay, so I'm back over here. I'm getting, you know, water from my bucket and then coming back over to the palette, getting a little more paint. Still working with peacock blue. And then I kind of want to, okay, I kind of want to figure out this shape. Do I like it? Do I not? I kind of do, but I want, I think this to kind of come in more like that. You can follow those little lines there. We'll just let that kind of run down. Now I don't want that totally outlined looking. I want this to be soft at the top, so I'm just going to soften that just by using that thirsty brush method. Just pick up a little bit of that, so and it now gets fuzzy in there. And then maybe over here, we'll add a little more of that peacock blue and kind of define this shape. I want it to be fuzzy here and sharp over here. And I'm still kind of using my flat brush. If you feel like maybe it's not working for you, you can switch over to a round brush at any point. The flat brush was really just to get most of that paint on there. You can always switch back and forth between two different types of brush. If I need to, I can come in with the flat brush and add more color into here. Maybe, and then maybe I want to switch to a round brush. So I go to maybe my number 8. Still working with peacock blue, and maybe that allows me to kind of get in a little finer point or something, where I can have a little more control. Although, even you could really get by with one brush, because you can get a lot of that just by using your brush sideways. You can get a lot of coverage made without a flat brush. I'm going to soften this area. I don't really like that shape, so I just rolled my brush. It was wet, and I just rolled it there and picked up some color and put down some water at the same time. So, and that just softens that little bit right there. Let's see. I want to come back over and revisit this a little bit. I don't like that shape that I made. So we'll just do that. And then as we get kind of close to the edge, I want that to soften quite a bit. I don't want it quite so hard coming off the edge of the paper. Just add some more water to that and pick some of that back up. That was getting a little dark right there. It's hard to tell on camera, I think, but no, you could see that. Let's come over here. I want to add a little color over in here. Outline that shape a little bit. And we'll just pull that off the edge there, and then come in here and roll my brush just so I'm picking up a little paint and moving it around. Same with over here. Maybe I want that to be a little softer. I don't mind that little sharp bit right there. We'll see if it stays or not. But that's not a bad start. So let me pick up more of this excess so I don't get weird drips. Careful not to actually paint with my brush. I had it kind of angled pretty close to the paper there. I almost put a stripe all the way across. Okay, so I've got that. I'm going to flip this around now and kind of look at it and see what I've got going here. And that's, not a bad shape. This is a little weird down in here, but that's, I think, going to get some darker stuff going on. I think it's going to be a little darker down in there. So let me just see if I can't soften that up just a bit more just by rolling my brush. If I have to, I can get some more toilet paper or Kleenex out and use it to pick up. I don't need that much. I'll just kind of see what happens there. That's a little bit better. Right now, this is looking like an X. I don't want that. I want that to change. But let's see what's coming here. Maybe this kind of comes across there a little bit more. So still just using peacock blue. If you don't have peacock blue, cobalt blue is nice. Ultramarine blue is nice. Even royal blue is a nice, or if you, what is it? Sennelier brand. Boy, I can't say it. I have trouble saying it. Sein. I don't know. It's French. I have trouble pronouncing French words. Anyway, they have a non-staining phthalo blue, which is really pretty blue. Normally, phthalo blue is staining, but theirs apparently does not stain. So I've been thinking about ordering some and trying it out. I'm just going to kind of bring that across there. I'm just going to come in with some more color on that right in there, just to kind of break up that weird little round thing that was lending itself to look like an X, making this kind of do that. So now I'm going to come in, still just peacock blue, and I'm going to just kind of maybe, that's a little dark. I'm going to maybe kind of bring in some cloud, kind of the bottom of some clouds right in here. Like this chunk of cloud is on top of or in front of that bit of clouds. So there's a little bit of the bottom of it here. And all I'm doing is using the site, I put a fair amount of color down, but then because it was so wet, paper not necessarily, but there was so much water in that color, I just cleaned my brush out and then used the water in my brush to kind of move it around. And really, this is just playing around with these shapes to where I make them look kind of like cloud shapes. Maybe now I want to make this a little. I'm super happy with this shape right here, so I'm going to come back in and just get rid of that line right there, just by doing a little lifting. And if I can't get it to lift up all fully 100%, I'll just add some more color, and we'll just separate those two clouds apart by bringing that across like so. The cool thing about skies is they can be kind of textured. They don't have to be super smooth unless you're painting a really, calm, cloudless day. And maybe this is where your sky looks like. Your sky can have a lot of texture and a lot of little blossoms and things in it. It doesn't necessarily have to be, 100% real looking, but what am I trying to say? It doesn't have to be smooth, is what I'm trying to say. It can be kind of textural, like this is getting. Because clouds aren't, they look puffy and fun and like cotton candy or something sometimes, but other times they kind of have a texture to them. I think now I'm going to grab a little royal blue. So that's that darker blue. This is kind of a sky blue. Now I'm using kind of a darker blue. It's got a little more. I'll show you. Come over here. It's this blue here. This is peacock blue. You can see it's quite a bit brighter. This is still a fairly bright color, but it's quite a bit less bright than the peacock blue. And I'm going to bring in a little of that down in here. Maybe there's a bit of a storm brewing or something, so we get a little bit of dark going on down in here. And all I'm doing is I'm using this. Here's another mark with your round brush. I'm just basically going back and forth like this, kind of in a swoopy way. And you can see I'm painting, making a mess on my hand, but I'm just kind of painting little arcs and arches upside down, little little wispy things with my brush, just and the side of my brush. I'm not using the point. I'm using the side. I can come up in here and add a little more of that. As it gets drier, it starts, as I have less and less water in my brush, it gets a little more clump, not clumpy, what's the word I'm looking for? Just, well, you can tell it's a drier thing, so it's not as much, it's broken up more by the bumps on the paper. So I'm just picking up the tops, just throwing in a little of that there. We'll come back in, add a little more heat and water to our brush, and just kind of add some more water here. And kind of get that to soften out as we go down. Maybe that'll turn into some rain or something. That's another thing. I don't know yet. Let's see. I want a little dark up here in the corners, I think, just to kind of help round it out, kind of pull your eye. This dark will kind of help pull your eye in. But as I get closer in towards that cloud, I'm going to start feathering that out. So that's where even though I'm not painting that smooth gradient like we did at the beginning of class, that's exactly what's happening here. I put a bunch of color down, and then I clean my brush out, and all I'm doing is using water to kind of smooth that out as I go along. It's not as smooth as that smooth gradient we made before, but it's still a gradient, very similar to that. And you can see it just starts to get a little water on there. Maybe that's a little too much, so I'm gonna come back in. I wipe my brush off on my rag, and then I can go in and roll that and pick some of that back up. Yeah. Maybe I want a little more up in here as well. In some areas. I could probably be using a larger brown brush for this, but that's all right. I definitely would be if this was a much larger theme. This is kind of smaller, so it's all right. So we'll just add some more dark royal blue up into there. Maybe this needs to come down a little bit away from the edge. I'll soften that as well. Kind of set back and see what I've got going on there. That's kind of interesting. There's a glare here, so it looks like that's super light, but it's not. And, well, it's light, but it looks kind of like it's teal, and that's just the light's reflecting. When that dries, it won't look like that. Almost looks like you're underwater right there. Okay, so yeah, I think that's maybe I want a little indigo. So if I come over here, this is my indigo right here. It looks black on screen, but it's not. You guys know that. It's a dark blue. Maybe I want a little of that in there as well. So I'll just make a little puddle here. I'm going to switch to a bigger brush. This is silly. That's a number 6. I'm gonna switch up. I could switch to the 10. I'll just use an 8. Maybe I want a little dark. Oops. Hey, can't see what I'm doing. Maybe I want a little dark, kind of even darker down in this area. So we'll just kind of bring that down in there. And then kind of feather that out. Maybe this needs to be softer right there. Just soften that up with water. Get some of that back up with a dry brush. All I'm doing is just rolling the bristles. So let's throw in a little more water and then maybe some more indigo here. Yeah, just kind of, I like this dark, dark blue contrasting with the lighter, brighter blue. Right now that looks weird, but that's just because it's a blob of paint on there. Now I can come in with a clean brush and just kind of spread that around. Just has water in it. And then maybe it comes down into here doing something, I don't know. Let's see, I want a little more dark over here. And the reason I start, you start with the white. The white is the lightest your paper will ever be. So that's the brightest, lightest spot you'll ever have. So I start with the lighter colors and move into the darker colors, which is opposite of what acrylics and oils generally do, because they are more opaque for the most part. Well, it depends on the technique you're using, but for the most part, oils are more opaque. So you can, well, not for the most part, they are more opaque, unless you really thin them down. And you can, so you can add yellow on top of blue, and the yellow, unless you mix it in, the yellow will stay yellow. Whereas in watercolor, you don't necessarily, can't really do that. I mean, you kind of can, but not really. So you always want to, so that's why I started out with that peacock blue, which is a much lighter, brighter blue than the royal blue and indigo that I'm using now. I'll add a little indigo down in here. And you can see there's not, I just found a shape that I kind of liked with the clean or toilet paper. And, I didn't really create, I'm gonna add a little indigo up in there. It feels like that needs to be a little darker right there. I didn't draw out clouds because I think when you end up drawing clouds, you end up with clouds that that look like, to draw a cloud, you end up with a cloud that looks like that. And that's great, but that's not what I'm going for with, if I were doing something more stylized. I know several artists who do clouds that are similar to that. But they're doing a more stylized type of painting. Here we're working in kind of impressionistic and an impressionistic style. So we want it to look somewhat suggest clouds, but it doesn't. We're not making them look 100% accurate or real, like those ultra realistic painters. But we're also not making them stylized or abstract either. So let's see. I feel like this needs, I'm going to come in, this needs to be a little darker in here. I want this little light area too, but I feel like there's like a part of this that should be darker, have this kind of shadow under it, kind of flatten that edge in that side of it out a little bit. So we're looking, that's the bottom side of the cloud that we're kind of looking at. maybe this, I want to smooth that out just a little bit. It's a little bit too dry looking for what I want. Yeah, it's just flattening that little area of cloud out. That comes over and joins into that and softens that little, like that shape right there that I have. Yeah, so this is kind of, maybe there's a little bit of a shadow here cast from this kind of thing coming in there. That shadow's that cloud's casting a shadow on this cloud in the back area. The point of this is just kind of experiment and have a good time trying, practicing painting a sky. Yours isn't going to look exactly like mine, and I will never paint another sky exactly like this. I'll paint similar skies. I'm gonna add a little more peacock blue in there, just to, but I won't, I won't ever be able to paint this perfectly again. That's the great thing I think about watercolors. You can't necessarily duplicate it. You can paint something similar, but you can't copy it exactly. Unlike with there's just too many variables with the water and gravity and how the paper lets things flow. And with oil paintings, you can pretty much map out how the artist painted their piece and copy a piece. You can forge a piece fairly easily. I mean, for years, that's what master studies were. Obviously, I've done a few master studies in oils and acrylics and whatnot throughout the years. Obviously, I did not try to sell them as my own, or as the original. I don't think they were as good as the original, but I've done a few master studies in my day. And, but it's relatively easy-ish. I say that, with a bit of a caveat. It's not that difficult to study and practice and get to where you can paint an and go or it's a little harder with Jackson Pollock or something like that, but you can get pretty close. Whereas with watercolor, no matter how hard somebody tries, they're not going to be able to duplicate this exactly. Now, having said that, we can study each other's techniques and whatnot, and we can paint things that are similar. But I'll never have this exact combination of sky, again. It'll just, this is a one-off kind of thing, which is cool, which is what I like about watercolor. It just lends itself to more spontaneity. So I've rambled on there and not told you. I was just switching back and forth between some peacock blue, royal blue, and I think indigo, mostly indigo. I don't think I used actually royal blue, but I was kind of switching off back and forth between those. While I was talking there. So I apologize that I wasn't really telling you which colors I was using, but hopefully you could decipher that. So yeah, so I'm kind of happy with that so far. I don't know what is going on, down here. I can come back in and soften this a little bit more if I want. I don't necessarily have to. If I end up painting, some mountains in front of it, that'll cover up that too. So it could be it could become anything. And here in a little bit, I'll show you one that I did a number of years ago where I was practicing the sky, and then I was like, "Oh, I really like how that sky turned out," and I turned it into an actual painting. My beard's poking me in the nose. Or mustache, I guess. Let me grab a little more indigo, I think, and I've actually mixed. I'll show you what's happened here. I've actually mixed a little indigo, which is this, with some peacock blue. I picked up some of this peacock blue over here, kind of pulled it over, and it's just a brighter version of indigo, but different than royal blue. Royal blue, it's different. It's just ends up being a different, another shade, I guess, not hue, another shade of blue. It's darker, obviously, but not too much. Maybe, and that was really wet there. This is really wet there. I kind of want it to run a little bit. I want a little bit of that. I don't have that over enough for you. Both of these sides are pretty wet. I'm going to put some of that back up so it's not harder. But you can see it's starting to kind of form these little, almost like cloudbursting shapes. Let's come in and grab a little peacock blue. I'll just show you. I dropped a little more peacock blue in there, and then I can come over and grab a little more indigo. And it just makes that brighter dark. It's not quite as dark as the indigo, which is almost this black. But it's also not as bright as the peacock blue, and it's not the same as the royal blue. It's just a slightly different blue. That's a little sharp edge right there that I didn't care for. I'm just kind of softening it. It's still pretty wet right there. So I can kind of soften these edges up. Soften this edge up. Kind of a sharp edge that formed there where the paper was drying. The good thing about a quality piece of watercolor paper is it will take a fair amount of use. That sounds bad, but it's not. You can be a little rough with this paper. I mean, 140 weight doesn't sound like it's, I mean, this is 140 weight watercolor paper, and you can see it's more, it's stiffer than regular copy paper, and it's 100% cotton. It's not made from any wood pulp, and then it has some sort of binder in there. I can't remember. Well, I don't know, actually. I don't know that Arches or any of the paper companies exactly publish what they use, but it's probably some sort of trade secret or something. But it's got a binder in there that kind of, other than water, that kind of binds it together, and then it's a handmade piece of paper. That in this case is just cut up into these pads shapes. But if you look closely at that Fabriano paper that I was showing you, it had a bit of you could see a bit of the deckled edge, where it was the edge of the sheet that they were making. I'm liking this kind of indigo peacock blue mix. I think I'm going to bring a little more down into here as well. Lower this so I can look at the top as well as I'm going to bring a little more into here. And again, look, see, I'm just, I just placed some down with the side of my brush, but then I can come back in and really add, I can add some water to this side and really let that side is a little dry, I think. Just add a little more. I can add that and then let that kind of run down. And you can see that starts to look a little bit like, without really trying, I'm not trying at this moment to make it look like rain yet, but without trying, it starts to look a little bit like rain. Let's soften that right there. I like that little bit peeking through. I think that this needs a little bit of that, just slightly darker bit. It's nice, but it needs a little more emphasis. So just darken that up a little bit. Maybe just a bit in here too. Not a lot. I don't need a huge amount right in here. Just a little bit. And once I've got that slightly dark there, now I can start to feather this out, make it a little lighter, and separate this kind of cloud maybe from, or that level of the cloud from this level. Maybe, starting to not really care for this section. It has a hard edge right there, so I can come in. If I can't scrub it too much, all the way out, I can then add a little more dark on top of that and let that kind of bleed out and feather out and do its thing in that water that I placed on there. And that kind of hides that line that I wasn't really caring for too much. Yeah. So I think what I want to do is add a little bit of a highlight to some of this. I want some of this to look like maybe the sun's glowing. Maybe the sun's down, kind of over here, and it's casting a little bit of light onto these. So what I'm going to do, get rid of this ugly green area here. Ran into my yellow. Just kind of clean that spot up on my palette. This green touched my yellow and then it ran over into my orange and I had a weird color there. I want to use this so I'm just using this used toilet paper to kind of clean that up. I want to use this, I think for now, this
Michael,
yeah.
I'm gonna have to sign off. I've got chickens to put up.
Oh, okay. Well,
All right.
I'll post this.
Okay, great.
You can watch the
Thank
rest of it.
All right, thank you.
Have a good week. We'll see you next week.
All right, bye.
Bye. Camera's kind of doing a weird thing here, but you kind of see what I'm doing. So I want to use this. I want to use this permanent yellow orange, or I mean, sorry, permanent yellow deep. So I kind of wanted a clean spot because I want that to be fairly pure. It's a little washed out on camera, but or at least on my screen. That could just be my screen. So I want a little bit of that. So I've got a nice little puddle here. My water is fairly dirty looking, but just by taking the top little layer of it, I can get some pretty clean water. So I have a nice puddle there. Just real quickly. Yeah, it looks a little better on my laptop. I think it's just this monitor that I'm using. So I'm going to come over and I'm going to switch back. I do need to switch to a smaller brush. So I was using this 8. I'm going to use my number 6 round, only because I want, you know, a little more control. Let me just angle that a little bit better. So I've got my number. Oh, there we go.
Is your paper still wet?
It's still wet in some spots, but it's still like up in here, it's dry. But right here in this area where I've been working, it's wet. But not up here. It's 100% dry up in here. But I can go back in and you know, I'll show you. I'm not super crazy about this shape that's happening right there. I can go back in and kind of, oops, there's a little yellow in that, but that's all right. I can kind of soften that back with water. Wish I'd cleaned my brush out better. But yeah, no, most of it's dry. Most of the paper's dry. Let's see if that'll go back into focus. Does that look focused to you guys? But yeah, no, it's really only wet down here. It's dry up in here where I'm going to be using this. What happens is it starts to dry. I'll put, you know, if you need it to be wet, you can add more water, keep adding more water. But generally, I start out up here and work my way down, so it'll be a little more wet down here. But no, I guess that's a really long explanation to just say it's mostly dry. Except for where I was just working. So I'm going to take, because this is dry up in here, I'm going to take my number 6 round and pick up a little permanent yellow deep, any kind of orangey yellow. If you've got like a azo yellow or Indian yellow, you know, any of those kinds of things, anything like that would work. Or a light orange, you know, something. I'm going to come in and I'm just going to kind of paint a little highlight first. Now that looks stupid, obviously, but I'm going to complete, you know, that's just wet, and I'm going to completely wash my brush out, and this is where that kind of that smooth gradient technique comes in handy. We're just adding a little bit of a highlight there. If I want, I can come in with maybe a little opera while that's still wet and just give it a little pink glow as well. So that's one way of adding a little, I'm gonna pull that back out this way too. That's one way of adding a little color, a little glow. I can just come in with a really wet brush and paint on some yellow like that. That's that permanent yellow deep. So it's kind of an orangey yellow. And just because that's dry, it's not mixing with the blue. It's just on top of the blue that's in there. And it gives a kind of a yellow glow to my cloud. Add a little bit more. So that's the other way. That's another way of adding color to your clouds. And that's just a nice little glow. Maybe down in here, we're going to get a little bit of a pink glow. We'll just add a little opera. Maybe down in here too. So I'm adding a little opera. That is way too much, obviously, but now I can come back in and just add water and move that around. And all I'm really doing is just kind of rolling my brush over it. And I've added a little hint of pink sunset, you know, or sunrise to that those clouds. Before that dries, I need to take care of this. I forgot I put that little blob of opera right there. So you can see I put a little blob down, but then I moved it around with my brush. And I wouldn't be able to do that if this wasn't 100% dry. So if your paper's not dry, and you'll notice I haven't come down here where it's still wet. You know, it's still wet right in here. So I'm staying above where it's dry, or mostly dry. And that's the kicker. That's really the key. I'm gonna add a little paint kind of over here. Just to that. Give it just a hint of something going on there. Maybe a hint of yellow in there. So I'll just brush on a little, then come back with water and kind of soften that up a little bit. A little hint of that color right in there. And you see, I mean, this isn't necessarily finished yet, but it's getting there. You know, after I you know, decide maybe I want something going on down here, I can come back in. Let me just pick up some of this excess water. A really good thing with a toilet paper roll is just to roll it across your painting like that, and it picks up it picks up a little excess. If you have just a wee bit too much, you can use it like that to pick up a little of the color and a little of the water. I'm going to hit this with a dryer real quick. So just added a little, I think this needs a little, and maybe down here instead of that yellow deep, the permanent yellow deep, I'll come in with a little lemon yellow. Down here it's a little lower. Maybe this is getting a little more yellow light. I don't know. Just to get, and then I'll have it kind of work its way into that darker. And you might be asking, well, why aren't you painting the yellow first since it's lighter than the blue? And you could do that, but I have a tendency to get more green in the sky than I want necessarily sometimes. So a lot of times I will wait until kind of this point to pop in a little highlight of the yellow. I know I can do it on top of this. Once it's dry, it won't mix as much. If I start getting a little green, I can kind of pick that up. And if I get a little bit, it's not a big deal, but it just kind of gives me that little pop of color without really putting in a whole yellow background that kind of makes this look a little more green than I'd like it to. I'm not really thrilled with what happened here. Sort of let that get away from me and I wasn't paying attention. But you can see even that's 100% dry, I can go back in and soften that. And even if it was next week or next year, I could go in, as long as I don't seal this with something, I can go in and soften and lift some of my, some of this paint back out. I just didn't like that little bit of whatever was going, those weird shapes that were going on there. I wasn't paying attention and I let those sort of happen. I want that a little softer. Yeah, so maybe I want a little bit, I'm gonna come in with a little, little bit of rain here. So I'm gonna grab a little indigo. I'm Not a lot. I'm using my number 6 brush. I'll show you. So I just grab a little bit and kind of drop it down over here in this puddle of, if I need a little more water, I'll grab a little more water. I just want something kind of dark, but not super dark. I mean, even if I pick up some of this green, that's okay. And I can add, we'll come back over here. And real quick, just to show you, I came back over and I was sitting there mixing, and I got that point back on the brush. So I want to put in a little, maybe I'm getting a little rain coming off of this. So I'm going to start, and maybe it's going this way. I'm going to just start, that was a little dark, but just a little less color, a little more water. I'm going to start it kind of coming down. And all this is just a little upper streak of rain, upper atmosphere rain. You kind of see those little cloud bursts. I'm going to grab a little of that blue-green just because it's nice dark. Pull that out. And all I'm doing here is pulling this in front of that little, that little light burst of cloud. There's a little bit of rain coming down, and then I'll come in and make this kind of a darker, little shadowy area here. And I don't want you to, like get frustrated if yours isn't looking like mine, or, I'll tell you this, I don't finish more of these little sky practices. I don't turn more of them into paintings than I do turn into paintings. For every 10 or 15 of these I do, I might get one where I'm like, oh, that's not too bad. All this is really practice. I'm just practicing. I'm practicing this kind of sky technique so that I can use it either whether I'm, if I'm starting, if I'm doing a painting and I want this kind of a, I could have stopped at any point before I got to where I am now. I could have just done the peacock blue and left it, and that would have been fine. Then I took it a little further with the royal blue, and I could have stopped there, and that would have been fine. All I'm doing is kind of taking it darker and darker to kind of play around with and practice this kind of sky technique. So if you don't get something that you don't, that you like, right, that's okay. I have, probably 75% of the time, I don't get something that I like from these little practice skies. And so you just have to tell yourself, oh, I'm just practicing, I'm just playing around and having a good time. But yeah, there we go. We have a little rain burst right there. Maybe there's another one coming in here. So we'll just kind of fiddle with that a little bit, come in. And you don't want to overdo it. I almost got to where I overdid that, I think. You want to be cautious because you can easily overdo it. And I'll tell you, if I had $1 for every time I overdid green, I'd be really wealthy. I'd at least have a few $100. It's just a matter of practice. Sometimes you can go back in while it's still wet and fuzz that out even more so it looks a little more ethereal. Maybe that's a little too dark right there, so I want that to soften up. And I'll just kind of just use the side of my brush, and then I get kind of a sheet of blue coming down with just a hint of that rain kind of look. I can come up here and soften some of that as well, maybe. But yeah, I mean, I can go in and add more. I don't want to overdo it. I don't, I wouldn't want maybe, 3. Maybe I'd want 3 or if I'm going to do this, I don't want an even number of those kind of deals. But maybe 3 or 5 or something like that. Don't need too many, or I just extend this so it's longer. It's bigger, or it comes down further. I'll show you an example of a sky that I actually did like, and I turned it into a little painting. There's a little bit of a glare you'll get from the lights, but maybe I can get that out of there. I don't know. I can't do anything about the overhead lights. Those guys there. I don't. Maybe if I do that, but you can kind of that started as me practicing a sky and just playing around, and then I was like, oh, that kind of looks like maybe an oceany kind of island kind of thing. I don't know. So this is that's all made up. I just kind of went in and was like, oh, I found a photo of a sailboat that I kind of liked and kind of used it as inspiration. And all this stuff was painted after this sky. So you can see you can turn these things into something. I just don't always, because I'm not always sure I like the sky. Sometimes, like this one I lived with for a while. I can't get that to hang back up. This one I actually lived with for a while, looked at it, liked it, but didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with it. And then one day I was like, oh, that kind of feels like an ocean. And I've never been to Hawaii or any of the islands like that, but it kind of had that feel to me. So I did that just on a whim one day. I have spent a lot of time near the Gulf Coast, so I'm familiar with what the skies and stuff look like there. But anyway. So that does anybody have any questions or I can go in and add a few birds if I want to. Let's see, that's all pretty dry. I don't know where oh, there it is. I can get my little round brush and pick up some, dark blue here. Royal blue. Add in a little indigo just to make it a little grayer. And I don't like to add more than 3 birds flying around just because I like odd numbers. They're more interesting than even numbers. And if you get too many birds in there, I used to put, like 9 and 7 and 3 seems like a good number. So I just rolled my brush like I was talking about. I loaded it up with paint and rolled it, and then maybe we'll put a little bird right in here. A little guy right there. You want another one flying here. Maybe my third one can go. I like odd numbers, that's why I generally go with 3. 5 seems like too many birds. There we go. There's my third. Just couple 3, 3 little birds kind of flying and add some life to the sky. Something's going on. Maybe I'll have some mountains or something down here. That's not really important. But yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of a fun little demonstration on painting a sky. You know, it does, again, I'm not painting a portrait of a particular sky, even if I'm using, you know, I have hundreds of photos of, if I go to, I'll show you really quickly. Photos for paintings. Let me share my screen really quick. And there we go. If I go to, yeah, there we go. Maybe it was clouds. I don't remember how I have them. Do I have them scattered? Oh yeah, here we go. You know, I take. Well, that's gonna. I should have just. That's gonna take forever to turn. Foot here. You know, I'll just use this. Do it this way. Here's an interesting sky. I mean, that's kind of fun. And kind of overcast. You know, really cool contrast against these yellow. Whoa. There we go. Really cool contrast against these yellow flowers. I thought that was kind of interesting. Now, how do I get out of this? There we go. Yeah, here's another one that's, oh, I'm opening Photoshop again. Dang it. There we go. This is really cool sky. And you can see it's, you know, it kind of looks like what we were just doing. It's blotchy and, oh, there we go. I'll just close that. You know, it's blotchy and has little light areas, some dark areas. You know, it's kind of cool. So I take, there we go. I just collect photos of, you know, if I see something cool, I'll take a picture of it. That's kind of cool. So I take, and this is just a fraction of the ones that are on my cell phone. This is really cool. That was a really cool cloud down in Las Cruces. So just, you know, that's what I do. I just observe, you know, I take lots of shots, or if I don't have my phone or camera with me, let's get rid of that. Okay. And we'll go back to, I take lots of photos, and again, if I don't have my phone or camera, which is pretty rare nowadays, I just really spend a lot of time looking at the sky and clouds, so that I can I can kind of replicate things from memory. But all it is really just, I mean, we all have spent time looking at clouds, so it's not like anything I do special. We all admire what the sky looks like when it's dramatic or interesting. It's just kind of committing those things to memory. So yeah, any questions, any thoughts? Problems, complaints? I'm going to take it by your silence that you're all you have no questions and no complaints. Next week, I will email out an image that we will use as inspiration for a painting. Now my computer's, and I'm going to look for it tonight and send you guys all the list, the kind of supply list. I'm sorry that the college didn't hand that out. I thought they just handed it out or emailed it to you, that I didn't realize you had to ask for it. So I will ask them about that. And it could be that they just, you know, they didn't realize or something. Photoshop just froze up on me. It did. where was I? So, yeah, so I will find that that list for you guys and email that to you tonight, so you have it. Again, most of the colors, you know, may not be the brand, but you can find most of the colors. The you know, the whether you're using cadmium or the only reason I stopped using cadmium is it's poisonous. And the cat here drinks my water all the time, and I was always worried about the cat drinking my. I don't know. I think it's in such a small amount that it's probably not that bad, but I just didn't want the cat keeling over because of my water bucket. I don't know why it likes to drink. I mean, it has clean water in number of places around the studio, but it still likes to drink out of my brush
Michael,
bucket. Yeah.
so does my cat.
Does it? What is
Yeah.
that? I don't know what that's about. So I stopped using cadmium colors just because I was worried about that. But you know, there's nothing wrong with them. I suppose if you're, you know, smart, you just clean, you know, you empty, if you're not lazy like me, you'd empty your bucket out when you're done for the day, but I don't always do that. That's funny. Apparently it's not limited to just the one cat. I don't understand it, but anyway, you know, I'll send out that list, and I have options. You know, if you don't have royal blue from Holbein, that's fine. If you have a different blue, you'll be fine. There are a bunch of similar blues, and you know, you don't have to have everything. So I'll send that out to you guys tonight as soon as I find it. I know it's in here somewhere. And then I will, I guess I'll see, and I'll send you guys out an image and a sketch. I'll do a sketch for you too, so you can kind of see, because I like to edit the photo. You know, if I were, I don't know if you remember that photo of the, you know, now I can't think of anything. You know, I'd add something to a photo, or I'd take something out. Sometimes things are in weird places, so I'll move them because I took, you know, I like the angle of maybe a building that I took, but there's a weird, you know, the tree is too far away at that angle. So I like the angle of the building, but I'll move the tree over. So it's a better composition. So I'll show you, that way you can see what I'm talking about when I say, you know, working on the composition. And I'll talk a little bit about that next week as well. So I guess with that, if nobody has any other questions, I will see you next week. Hopefully you guys had a good time. Yeah, I look forward to seeing you guys next week.
Thank you. We'll see you next week.
All righty.
Thank you. It's very good. Appreciate it.
Oh yeah, have a great week.
You too.
Bye.